Hey everybody, it's the Nitty Professor, and today I thought I would talk briefly about this book which I finished reading, which is called American Flannel, How a Band of Entrepreneurs Are Bringing the Art and Business of Making Clothes Back Home. Took me a minute to read it there because when I see it, it's backwards, but now when you see it, it's frontwards, so that's what we want. This book was published in 2024, and according to Stephen King, see, it's the Stephen King, I can confidently say this will be one of my favorite books of 2024. So what drew me to this book is I found out about it because one of the chapters features Rancourt Company, made in Maine, Heritage Boot Company. And I thought, well, that's really cool. And I think it's especially cool because Rancourt doesn't get as much attention in the Heritage Boot community, and I'm not sure why. And to be honest, I only own one pair of Rancourts. Now, I really have my eye on the Freemans. It's just a question of money. I can't buy boots every month. It's out of the question. But in any case, the unboxing for these boots was wonderful. They come with these really nice bags, and they deserve the attention. I've shown you these boots a few times. They're made of Horween Chrome Excel leather. Got really nice styling here. Vibram soles. The quality is top notch. Wonderful. It's a Goodyear welt. It looks like a storm welt. I mean, that's a serious welt right there, people. And it's a 360. Goes all the way around. These boots are nothing to sneeze at. So I thought that's really cool that they were featured in a book about making clothing and shoes in the United States. Now, they're only featured in one chapter. Let's see here. Give you kind of a little hint of what's in here. They're in the chapter that's called Heritage Land, Chapter 5. And the other chapters they cover, there's a clothing brand named American Giant. Not sure if you're familiar with that. There's a lot in here about making socks. So it's got Chapter 6 is the Sock Queen of Alabama. And flannel plays a big role. And I thought reading about flannel was cool too. They mentioned Filson. It would have been cool if they might have gone into Filson a little bit more. When I was traveling in Minnesota a few years back with my sons, we went to Bemidji. And they still make woolen goods there, which I think is awesome. They make blankets, they make trousers, they make all kinds of stuff. It's like a small scale Filson, and the store is just a complete throwback. It's really cool. I bought even wool there to spin as well as yarn, and my son got these really nice wool overalls. In fact, we should show them to you. I think they kind of fit in. They had the Red Wings there, and they had some really nice heritage boots. By the way, here's a tidbit about the author here. His name is Steven Kurutz. I guess that's how you say that. I think he's a journalist. Apparently he was a reporter for the New York Times. So it's a great book. It's well written, like I say, 2024. And I thought it was just cool. I reread the chapter on Rancourt today. And even just going back, I learned more about how the shoe industry was big in New England. And of course, Rancourt's in Maine. And then I was thinking about the film with Jumanji, right? Robin Williams, and how his dad owned a shoe factory. And I was like, yeah, that's set in Massachusetts, I think, right? Rancourt, of course, is really famous for their moccasins, hand-sewn moccasins, and some of the patterns for that go back to the Native Americans. And there's just a whole lot of tradition there. The people who owned the factory came from Quebec, so they had migrated from Canada down to the United States, and apparently they spoke French forever and a day for a long time when they were there. And I got Benny here. He's kind of hungry, aren't you? You're a needy boy, aren't you, Benny? I know you can't see him, but he's pawing my arm. I thought it'd be interesting to read a few quotes from the book because I think it speaks to the issue of why we like to buy heritage boots. So, that whole chapter is called Heritage. But we get started off here just in the introduction, and he talks about the 2%. And he writes, most clothing, Carhartt's included, was now made in low-cost factories around the world, principally in Asia, And that's after, talking about how we wore blue jeans, high-top sneakers, Western boots, button-down dress shirts, and durable workwear, all of which are American inventions, but we no longer produce them. In 1980, around 70% of the clothing Americans wore was made domestically. Today, that figure is 2%. I mean, that's drastic. I think it's tragic. I really think it's tragic, because when I was growing up, and I like this quote too, over a period of 40 years, America had outsourced the shirt off its back. So when I was growing up, and I'm sure some of you, if you're my vintage, right, everything was made in America. It wasn't even an issue. I mean, you could find stuff that was made in Japan, right? I actually found an old shirt that my grandfather owned that I still have. It said made in Japan. I was like, really? That wasn't made in America? Let me see. We're talking here about how there was like a campaign in the 80s to try to get people to buy American. And there's a really telling quote right here. A narrator gravely intoned that America was losing its apparel industry. And the worst part is, said the narrator, we're doing this to ourselves. So the refusal to buy American goods. And of course, it has everything to do with price, because we saved a ton of money by outsourcing our apparel industry to poorer countries with less agency and worse governments and worse working conditions. And it's, probably something that we can't undo. But I think it's safe to say that a lot of our clothing now is made by workers who aren't treated nearly as well as American workers were back, when I was growing up. I mean, when I was growing up, textiles, so I lived in Alabama for 9 years. Textiles were huge. We'd used to go to the Russell Mills outlet store, and we'd go to LaGrange, and we'd go to where, Pepperell Mill, and where they made Cannon and all this stuff. And it's all gone. The little town next to mine, so I was from Auburn, and Opelika was a textile mill town. And it just became like a ghost town. In fact, they filmed part of Norma Rae in Opelika, Alabama. We were like seeing the stars like running around town back when they made that film. So the chapter on Rancourt is really kind of cool, and he goes into how the factory like kept on running, that's association with Alden for a while, and talked to some of the people who were making the shoes there, not only the older people who were 60, 70, sometimes 80 years old, but some African immigrants who came in to try to take over. And, they're still going, and I feel like I should patronize them more. Another thing that's interesting, so he mentions this author, Michael Williams, who has this blog called ACL, and that he took an interest in Rancourt and gave them some press, and he also took an interest in some other companies that were American-made. And one of the things that came out was that if American companies wanted to market their goods successfully in the United States, it wasn't enough to convince people to, hey, let's keep jobs here, wouldn't that be cool? But if they invested in the heritage allure, the aura, the style, heritage style, that then some companies could keep going. And, that's kind of where we are buying our heritage boots and that kind of thing. And, I scoured my house. Yeah, I only spent 20 minutes, right? But I was like, I know I still have stuff that was made in America in these textile companies. And I actually did find a few things. I still have some textiles that are made in the USA. So, for example, here, it's a pillowcase. Honestly, I think I had this in the 70s. I kind of remember it. And it's still good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It holds up so much better than the stuff that's made today. And somewhere I found the tag, I'm going to show it to you, where it was made in Pepperell Mill, West Point, Georgia, made in the USA. See if we can see that, if we can zero in on that. Hopefully you can read it. Pepperell Mill, West Point, Georgia. We used to go there and get linens all the time. Towels, washcloths, sheets, blankets, everything. And they were so good. And now I was complaining to my son today. We were in Marshall's. We were looking at towels. I'm like, all the towels we get, they're made in India and they fall apart after a year. Here, I found this towel. It's got a cat. Of course it has a cat. And You know, tag's kind of faded, but it's still a perfectly good towel. Again, I don't know if you can see it, but it says right on there. Let me see if I can unfold the tag. Made in USA. Whoa, yeah. I mean, this towel, it's like 30 or 40 years old. It's fine. It's holding up great. The ones I buy from India, not so much. And I found this really cool shirt. Isn't that fun? It's Western wear. It's kind of an old-fashioned, kind of looks like what someone who was trying to found a village in Nevada would have worn. And, yeah, right there. I can't believe it. Everything I have. And I'm going to be frank, I work hard to avoid made in China. There's too much. I'd rather have it made in Guatemala than China. And this one I tore the label off, but this sweatshirt's from my days in graduate school. Look at that. Pennsylvania football, Quakers, made in USA. And it's just the most wonderful, beefy cotton. It's just held up for so long, you know. It's not going anywhere. Made in the USA, you know. So anyhow, I wanted to bring this book to your attention because if you're interested in learning more about the people who are still manufacturing products in the United States in the textile area, socks, clothing, and heritage boots, you might enjoy this book. I thought it was a really good read and was kind of quick, even with all the other reading that I've had to do with taking graduate classes and teaching and all that stuff. I found time for this one, and I found it pretty rewarding. And I think it'd be interesting to encourage journalists to maybe cover this topic a little bit more, especially with respect to footwear, since, you know, that's kind of what we're about here and all that kind of stuff. And if you know of a book that's similar, of a similar like interest or vein to this that we should be reading, that would be cool too, because I would like to read more. I'd like to inform myself more on how I can support the 2% of the manufacturers that are still left in the United States, because they're doing good work. And, you know, I like the whole independence. One of the big points that was made about in this book was that a few years ago, when there was a global crisis and, you know, we couldn't get goods coming in, we couldn't even manufacture masks and PPE. And it's because we tossed out all of our textile industry. So independence, buy local, all those good values, heritage, value your community. I think all of that is a part of what we can learn about here, and I encourage you to read it. So if you read it, let me know what you think. Y'all take care. Bye.